They were referred to as the two gnomes to make them feel better. Someone had tried elves, but that didn't make them feel better since it called up a Christmas which was months away and fading for them like the blue dot on any of the test monitors that would get shut off with an indiscreet shake of an aide's head. Pete chafed at the aides, but Jimmy raised a gray eyebrow and said, "What about the doctors clucking? You'd think they'd take a course on shutting up. Bad enough they call us gnomes all cute-like. Next, they'll start measuring our height with a pencil line, us standing in a doorway." That was yesterday, almost a week ago for these two. Their visits overlapped on Mondays and Tuesdays at this Cincinnati clinic, which had familiarity with progeria, the rarest disease in the world you don't die from, they had been told. Then came the asterisks. Today was sunny and held the scent of cut grass. Two groundskeepers blew the blades off the walk and stopped their backpack machines. One even put out a cigarette for them to shuffle past. It was Jimmy who had developed a painful limp, but for Pete, 2 years younger, the pace was plenty. They were headed to their bench, which would catch the shade until lunch. They both disliked wearing baseball caps, even to cover their baldness, since they bunched weirdly when cinched on their narrow heads. Poodle heads they shared only with each other. Pete looked around at nothing as they walked, well used to the view of the overgrown tennis court, the algae-laden fountain in the entrance circle with its stray pennies, the gutter-streaked stucco buildings. Jimmy thought he was picking up on a shared thought and said, "Yeah, if those two maintenance guys ever did any real work." Pete said, "That's not what I was thinking. I'm waiting. You know the drill." "Well, I'm remembering," Jimmy said. "Sure you are." Pete waited. Jimmy made sucking noises around a tooth, and Pete wondered if another one was coming loose. "0.6, said Jimmy. "Nice," said Pete. 1.9. "Nice. I checked that. 2.9. Still good. 58. Good. 240. Nice. Not applicable. Still good. 160 over 110. So-so. And 29. That's a good number," Pete said. "So, he tell you you're still alive?" "His little jokes, yeah," said Jimmy, and they both added, "Any day you can walk away from." They always laughed some at that, more out of a vague duty. Jimmy slowed. "Let's take this bench today. Okay with you?" "Are you kidding?" said Pete. "You're just a step ahead of me." The transition was always more awkward for Jimmy, the benches providing a sort of basket catch for him, then his having just one shoe scrape the walk if he swung his good leg. Pete felt the back slats against his ribs and adjusted himself. "You want to put your leg up?" he offered. "For old time's sake?" scoffed Jimmy. Come on," Pete said. "None of that." "Oh," said Jimmy, "now it's Mr. Chippery-Doo. Just don't tell me to be positive. One more person tells me, I swear, I don't care if it's your mother." Pete patted the bench. "Come on, here, put your leg up. You're supposed to be what? Limbler." "You mean limber, jerk? Doesn't your tutor give you any vocabulary?" And Jimmy brought his leg up with his hands. "I can do the rub thing they do," Pete said as he went to help. Jimmy let it fall. "Faggot," he said. "Oh," Pete said, "you still on that because of the male nurse?" "I did not," Jimmy said, "have the gown on backwards. He just wanted me to turn it around and flash him, faggot." "Well, who knows with those gowns anyway," Pete said. "Right," said Jimmy. "Leave 'em be." "Leave 'em be," said Pete. "Hands off, front or back," Jimmy said. "Not like you can't go underneath 'em," said Pete. "If it's a nurse, I mean a real nurse," said Jimmy, "then she can go under," said Pete. "She can turn it around," said Jimmy. "Inside out," said Pete. "Put a knot in it," said Jimmy, and they both groaned and cupped their groins. Their laughter got Jimmy sent out of control. shaking and holding his chest in pain. He fumbled into his pocket, trying to rise from the bench. He opened a pill case, but he spilled them out. Pete picked one up and put it in Jimmy's mouth. "Swallow it," he said, but it was a struggle, so Pete began stroking Jimmy's neck downward. Jimmy wrenched away and stood red-faced as his shaking subsided. "What the hell was that?" he said when he caught his breath. "You tell me," Pete said. "It's your body." No, the neck thing," Jimmy said. "I was already choking." "Well, it's what we did with our dog," Pete said, "for the roundworm pills." "Faggot," Jimmy said. "I was doing fine on my own." Pete spastically mimicked Jimmy's shaking and pill spewing, adding, "A nurse said, you got to watch out for that denial. That's the worst thing." "Don't you play doctor with me," Jimmy said. "I've heard it all before." "Okay," said Pete, faux recoiling. "You don't want the benefit." Jimmy started coughing but caught it. "Of your years?" "Yes, of my years." "Like you know anything," Jimmy said. "My father would have called you a whelp behind the ears." "Whatever that means. And yes, I do have something, a benefit, a hint, a glimmer, to use some vocabulary," Pete said. "Out with it," said Jimmy. "Meditation." "Oh, Jesus," Jimmy said. "Hippie crap." "No, it is not crap. It works for me. It makes me feel better," said Pete. "Keeps you young, does it?" And Jimmy leaned back on the bench, folded one leg so it at least hung on the edge, and then tried to bring his other leg up into a lotus position with no success. Pete noticed the spindly white ankle and winced at the recognition. "It's something with your legs, right?" Jimmy said. "If I can cross these, I get a what, a baby bottle?" "Your attitude sucks," said Pete. Jimmy released his legs and rubbed them. "Well, I earned it," he said. "Well, you sound like an old man." "I earned it," said Jimmy. Pete walked off. "See if you can spend it," he said. Jimmy hobbled after him. Wait, Pete," he said. He felt lightheaded, moving so fast, his heart always playing catch-up one way or the other. "Wait," he said weakly, and Pete slowed. "Hit that near bench," Jimmy said. They sat and pulled out caps from jacket pockets to ward off the sun. A baseball team must have had a ton of extra hats, the two figured, knowing how far off the charity radar they were, even in this sad joint. "So, what is it? You hold your breath or something?" Jimmy said. "No, that's just it," Pete said. "You let go of your breath." "Let go? Where?" "Wherever it wants," Pete said. "Like I've been keeping it from having a good time?" Forget this," said Pete. "Let's see if lunch is up." No, said Jimmy. "Anything but that. The less time I spend under a big banner that says, 'Use your spoon,' the better. So, give. Let my breath go. I got it." "You got shit," Pete said. "Not just your breath. Everything. Let go of everything. Everything, though. I can't stress it enough. Every single damn thing." "Okay, I'm on board." Now Pete was sing-song preachy. No, you're not. Every possession, every idea of a possession, every thought, every clue of a thought. Jimmy started singing gospel nonsense, clapping his hands. "Got no clue, Jesus, how to get into," Pete said, "every song in your head. Every girl's short skirt. Every girl, period," said Pete, and Jimmy stopped short. "What? Let go of girls?" he said. "I'm telling you," Pete said, "girls, chicks, babes, honeys." "Whoa," said Jimmy. "Let's start with breath." The groundskeepers weren't that close with the noisy blowers, but Pete waved them away, turning excitedly to Jimmy. "Old man Koporski over in the cancer ward taught me this. You take a deep breath." Jimmy did, stifled a cough and puffed out his cheeks. "Okay," he was told, "let it out." It whooshed out of him. No, slowly ease it out. Let it go. Not worried about it because another one is coming along, Pete said. "Okay, I got that. What about possessions?" "It's simple. You let them go." "Another one's coming along," Jimmy asks. Sort of. "Another GTO." "You want another muscle car to come along," Pete said. My only possession, Jimmy said, and I'm chucking it, not unless another one is coming along, cherry red. You don't even own a car. Well, it's what I was going to buy, Jimmy said. So, Pete said, you're holding on to something you don't even own? Well, it's called a dream, jerk, Jimmy said. Pete remembered how he had tested Koporski's patience to the point of thrown applesauce. He waited and said simply, let it go. Jimmy was vehement. Hell with you, my dream, he scoffed. This stuff works for you? I think I'm nearer Vana than I was last week, Pete said. Where? Koporski said I have to get near Vana if I expect to, forget it. It was all these exotic, these exercises, brain stuff, the Tibetan Book of the Dead even. With what? Said Jimmy. With what, said Pete. Dead even, said Jimmy. With what? Dead is even with everything. Not dead even. Besides, the idea is death is a phase and you can come back. Oh, interrupted Jimmy, it's a phase, like the moon. I knew I didn't want to get into this, Pete said. Jimmy rolled his head, waxing, waning, dead. No. You're hopeless, Pete said. And I shouldn't be, Jimmy said, thumbing back to the buildings. You think they're going to find a cure in, what, a couple of months? The only thing that's going to slow down my autopsy is a wheel comes off the gurney. Ooh, ouch, said Pete. There's something to let go of, the bitterness. Jimmy pulled his cap down farther and Pete thought he might be crying. They can use a scalpel on it along with the rest of me, Jimmy said finally. Pete said, breathe with me. Why are you so wrapped up in all this all of a sudden? Pete matched his hat with his friend's. I don't know. Koporski seems, sounds stupid, but he seems relaxed about, peaceful. He's been working on his mind. The tolerance was gone from Jimmy's voice. Because that's all that's left that works. When's the last time you think he got laid? 20 years? 30? Hey, he's still got a sex drive, he says, Pete said. A couple of months ago, he went to the peep show over at the college, gets in the booth, puts 1 quarter in, the shade goes up for 15 seconds, and then he left. That was enough, he said. I just wanted to see a few young girls to see if they were still making them with the vaginas. What was his book, Jimmy said? The Tibetan Book of the Dead Dick? Come on, don't make fun, Pete said. God, said Jimmy. Last pussy I saw was my mother kill a hairy wolf spider over my bed and her robe fell open. I call that scene going home. Ugh, said Pete with a face. Wait, so you are doing the movie in your head thing? Jimmy looked off. One thing I could use is a good wedge of hair pie. Pete laughed too hard. What's your problem, Jimmy said, and Pete backpedaled. No, just you with your all white pubic... White what? White what? Nothing, Pete said. A wedge, go for it. But for the movie, Koporski said to put stuff from your own life in it. Well, I put some extra stuff in there, Jimmy said. Well, but you're supposed to weave your memories together, Pete said. It gives a purpose to... Hey, it's my movie, Jimmy said. If I'm short a few memories, I can pad it out, okay with you? Geez, said Pete. Jimmy exhaled a long, frustrated sigh. That's it, said Pete. That's it. That's what? Koporski said meditation is sighing without the Hollywood. And Pete demonstrated a big sigh with the back of his hand on his forehead and a roll of the eyes. Like the silent movies, he told me. Jimmy mimicked him. Yeah, said Pete. Now, cut out the Hollywood and you got it. Do 10. I'll do them with you. Close your eyes. Come on, 10. They started, but after a few breaths in sync, Jimmy opened his eyes and saw Pete trance-like. He rose quietly and Pete put his hand on his arm. I'm levitating, Jimmy said. Don't hold me back. Still with eyes closed, Pete lifted his hand and gave a dismissive flick of his fingers. During their 5 days at home, Jimmy learned the word quotidian and couldn't wait to share the laughs with Pete. Everybody else has a word for 24 hours, he said. on their morning walk and laughed hard but barely drew Pete in. You get it? Plus, they used the word to complain about whatever's coming back tomorrow, like quotidian rigors, clean your room. Huh. And he shook his head. What I'd give for a 24-hour day. They usually got nearer the shade bench before getting serious, but Pete suddenly blurted out, .8. Oh, good. 2.6. 75. 165. Not applicable. Good. 110 over 85. Pete slowed. 146. 14.6? No. 146, Jimmy said. That's what it said. You got the paper? Let me see it. Pete unfolded it from his shirt pocket and they sat. Not like it matters, he said, handing it to Jimmy. Yeah, well, Jimmy said, we know nothing matters. He scanned it and gave it back. They sat. After an uncomfortable minute, Pete said, nature happening. It was their code for how people who met them usually clammed up and looked elsewhere. Okay then, Jimmy said. Big jump in a week. You ever have? Pete said. Hey, listen, there's always variations. Nurse has her period, runs the test half-assed to fuck over some guy's day. You ever have? Pete said. And Jimmy shook his head and felt an annoying slip of his baseball cap. He took it off and cinched it tighter. So it's accelerating, Pete said. Instead of one of my days being like 4 of a normal kid's, now it's 5. A year is 5 years gone, not 4. Well, maybe, Jimmy said. Well, even so, now 73 days equals a year. That's just down from 91.25. Same effing diff, Jimmy. I'm tired of playing with your fractions. Mondays were the toughest. Back away from home, the test results from last Tuesday fresh in their minds. For all the poking and prodding they got, there was no counseling to speak of, no one who could translate this rocket launch compression of life into what a child could grasp. Even their parents, Pete's dad was long AWOL, had lost step. They wouldn't stoop to blame their quotidian rigors, but that's where the parental bottom line had settled. Jimmy played with the peeling green paint on the bench and thought he'd mentioned the underworked groundskeepers. You want to breathe or something? He ended up with. Kaporsky died over the weekend, Pete said. Oh, geez, Jimmy said. Did you ever beat him at chess? I dropped a can of Pepsi once, Pete said, and it knocked his rook off the corner of the board, and he didn't notice. It's the closest I ever got. How old was he? 78. Jimmy said more to himself. He made it. Then, so what was it? The big door mirror in his room fell off. Jimmy laughed. Oh, hold on, he said. Didn't you tell me, he said, meditate so you become one with the mirror? Yeah, no, it didn't land on him. It was the noise. It gave him a heart attack. Oh, well, still. He'll be buried tomorrow, Pete said. Our birthday. Well, if I live that long, Jimmy said. Hey, let's stop saying that, okay? Pete said. Being cheerleader was usually Pete's role, and Jimmy found himself trying to remember any of the poster homilies in the waiting rooms. He could see the colors, but memory was starting to play tricks. Hey, I've been doing that heavy breathing, he said. In, out. I lock on to, hey, there's a chunk of my carbon dioxide. Oh, there's another. I really feel I can control where it's going. In, out, me, steering. Steering? Yeah, in the driver's seat. You shift your breath. And this is not some muscle car, Pete said. Hey, I'm working it. I'm doing fine. No, you're not. You're holding on to it. No, I'm not. I let it go, Jimmy said, and he took a breath, whooshed it out as he mimed slamming through the gearbox, punctuating each shift. Pete got upset. I don't mean you're holding your breath. breath. You're holding, you have to let go of the letting go. What? The process, Pete said. You can't grasp it. You got to not be part of it. It's a monkey fruit trap where the monkey's got his fist in the coconut hole, and all he has to do is let go of the mango piece, and he won't be caught and eaten. Man, I wish Kaporsky was still alive. Yeah, said Jimmy. He could tell me what the hell you're talking about. I got a 146, Jimmy, so calm when they tell you, and then they ask if you want a hard copy. Well, they see stuff all day, Jimmy started. Well, not me, Pete said. They don't see me all day. Take it easy, take it easy. Of course you're special, Jimmy said, finally remembering one of the posters. Pete looked at him and said, falsely upbeat, special, oh my? Or, now with the voice of doom, special, oh my. I thought you said she was calm, Jimmy said. No, she bolted to get the doctor to tell me, who was all calm by then. Jimmy took the paper from Pete's shirt pocket. It's not a death certificate, you know. Look who's talking, Pete said. Hey, Jimmy said, respect your elders, and he tore up the results. On the shade bench, Jimmy looked up from his chocolate cupcake with its 14 unlighted candles when he heard Pete's scuffling walk, cradling his cupcake with its candles. He sat gingerly, then got up with a grunt, brushed off the morning dew. Why'd you walk out, Pete said. Nurse Tika really wanted to spank your wrinkly ass. Hey, Jimmy said, I've seen her fluff a pillow. I don't think I can take 14 of those. My mom called, Pete said. She thought after the tests today she'd take us both for an early dinner before your mom gets here. Doesn't she have anything better to do than think about me? Oh, okay, Pete said. I just don't want to hear happy from the nurses, Jimmy said, or from the doctors. Okay, Pete said, it's not their fault, you know. It's 47 people in the world have it, so really, how could it be anybody's fault? And you and I have the same birthday, Jimmy said. You don't think God has a sick sense of humor? Like it's a race to the death already, but you and I have to have this extra competition? I'm 2 years younger, Pete said. I'm not competing against you. Oh no, said Jimmy, shaking his cupcake at him. You don't want to outlive 14? I am the oldest progeria patient in the world. Pete picked at Jimmy's body. Oh yeah, you're my ideal, like Superman, faster than a speeding slug, more powerful. Enough, Jimmy said. More powerful than a slug, able to leap a slug. Cut, said Jimmy. Anyway, I think, Pete said, the last chance for me to catch you was before the 146. You know that chart the doctor has, Jimmy said, the progeria stages, ultimate, penultimate, tertiary, all that? Well, I asked him what it meant. Oh, it's all mumbo-jumbo with him, Pete said. Calls it progeria half the time. Shush, Jimmy said. So, in my movie, there's these two guys driving, middle of nowhere, Arizona, say. You don't drive, Pete said. Kaporsky said the movie. Just shut up for a minute. Middle of nowhere. They've seen nothing but dust for hours. Then, the last chance saloon. They're in a muscle car, Pete said. No doubt, Jimmy said. It's 3 in the afternoon. Inside this dump, there's junk all over the walls and the ceiling, license plates, hatchets, broken sled, antlers, old football helmet. And there's 6 old farts inside. Watch it, Pete said. Yeah, Jimmy laughed. Like us. But anyway, it looks like they've been there forever. Like the bar stools followed their ass out when they were born. And they don't like strangers letting in the light of day. Hey, how about one guy's passed out on the thing, drooling, and somebody puts a coaster, Pete said. Yeah, good, said Jimmy. And the mean-ass bartender, he's got an eye patch. He comes over to the 2 guys and he says, what do you have? And when he brings the beers back, he says, I haven't seen you guys before. Where do you hang out? And the one guy, Jocko, the driver, he messes with him. And he says, we usually go to the penultimate chance saloon. The bartender's confused. Where the hell's that at? I grew up in these parts, he says. Oh, it's right there, Jocko says, pointing out the window. It's next to the last chance saloon. But, Pete said, your movie is supposed to be about your own. It's supposed to make it all seem fuller. Don't give me any shit, Jimmy said. Didn't you get caught up? You're supposed to remember your life, he told us. Well, this just hasn't happened yet, Jimmy said. But it doesn't make sense, Pete said. Jimmy stood. You are so fucking dense. I know, Pete said, what you were trying to do, but I got a 146, Jimmy. That's the top of the chart, ultimate stage. I am not changing the scene. Fine, Pete said. It's your damn movie. Jimmy looked down at Pete's cupcake. Jesus, you'd think he'd know what he was doing. I'm agreeing with you, Pete said. Jocko knows. Don't change it. No, the cook. Your cake has 13 candles. Pete counted by twos and left one finger up. I didn't even notice, he said. He took out one candle and started to fling it away. Jimmy stopped his arm. Let it go, he said. Pete, unsure, tapped the bench with it, anxiously at first, then slower, the waxing of a dull clock. He slid the candle into the icing. Jimmy pulled out a pack of matches and lit one.